Tigers, welcome back to Miss Nick's Math Lab. Today we have a special episode. We are going to be reviewing for our mixed numbers quiz tomorrow. So please pay close attention as you might see some of these questions, or at least similar questions, on your quiz. So let's just jump right in and get started. We've been learning how to convert to and from a mixed number. Now we're going to use what we've learned to add and subtract our mixed numbers. So let's do an example together. When we are adding and subtracting our mixed numbers, we want to be very careful that we are reading all of the details of the question they're asking us carefully. So let's imagine that we have a word problem. For example, Oliver eats 2 3/4 cup of food each day. So Oliver eats 2 3/4 cup each day. Now, the rest of our question says, if Miss Nick is babysitting Miss W's dog Brady, and Brady eats 3 1/4 cups each day, how many cups do both dogs eat in total? So we know Ollie eats 2 3/4 cups. We'll even remind ourselves whose food this is. And Brady eats 3 1/4 cup. And we want to know how much both dogs eat in total each day. So that means we need to add our two fractions because of that key word, in total. So we are going to be adding 2 3/4 plus 3 1/4. So to do this, we know we start with our whole numbers. We're going to start and add 2 plus 3. 2 plus 3 gives me 5. Now I'm going to add that answer to the fraction part of my mixed numbers. So I have 3/4 plus 1/4. 5 plus 3/4 plus 1/4. Now you'll notice our 5 doesn't have a denominator because it's a whole number. So we're not going to worry about adding that in yet. We're going to focus on the numbers that are in fraction form and have the same denominator because those are going to be easier to work with. So let's add those together for our next step. So because we haven't done anything with the 5, I'm just going to rewrite it and move that 5 over to here. All I did was rewrite it. And now we're going to add in the fraction part. But before we write it down, we want to add these two fractions together. 3/4 plus 1/4. We know we're just going to add the top parts. So 3 plus 1 gives me a 4 in my numerator. And then I carry over the existing denominator, which is 4. So that gives us 5 4/4. But what do we know about 4/4? That any fraction that has the same numerator and denominator is equal to 1 whole. And we don't want to leave any numbers that are in fraction form that could be converted to mixed number form or whole number form in their improper form. So we're going to convert that. So I'm going to take 5 4/4. I'm going to rewrite it down here just so we can see it easier. And I'm going to turn this into 5 plus, well, I know 4/4 is equal to 1 whole, so I could just rewrite that as 5 plus 1. Now I add those two numbers together and I get a total of 6 cups of food. That's a lot of food for some dogs. So 6 cups of food is my final answer. Now let's say we're taking a test and we forget how to do all of this and I leave my answer as 5 4/4. You might get some credit for it, but on the FSA, they would not accept that as the correct answer. So we need to make sure if we see a whole fraction or an improper fraction in our mixed number that we convert it to the proper form. So that's one example. Let's do another one. Let's do an example where we're going to have to convert the improper fraction in our mixed number. So let's think about a question that's telling us, let's see, 3 2/3 of Miss Nick's class is going on vacation for spring break. If 1 2/3 of Mr. Villadero's class is going on vacation for spring break, how much of the class is going on spring break? So we're going to add our two fractions together. And because they're mixed numbers, we know we want to start with the whole number. So I'm going to start with 3 plus 1. 3 plus 1 gives me 4. Then I'm going to add in my fractions. So I'm going to add in 2 over 3 plus 2 over 3. Now before I do anything else with my 4, I want to combine my fractions. So I'm going to keep the 4, just like I did up here. I'm just going to move the 4 over. I haven't done anything else to it yet. I added 3 plus 1 to get 4, and now I'm just leaving it there. And I'm going to add to that 4 the sum of my two fractions. Sum means add, so I'm adding 2 plus 2. That gives me a numerator of 4, and I keep my denominator. That's 3. So now I end up with 4 and 4/3 as my answer. But I don't want to leave any piece of my answer in improper form. So I'm going to decompose this. Now we've been practicing decomposing. First thing we do is separate out our wholes. So we know we already have 4 wholes. Those have been identified. And now we're going to see how many wholes we can find in the fraction part of our number. So I'm going to look and see first what happens when I take out my whole fraction. Since my denominator is 3, my whole fraction is 3 over 3. Once I remove that, then the amount I have left over, 4 over 3 minus 3 over 3, leaves 1 over 3 left over. So now I've decomposed my mixed number. I went from 4 and 4/3 to 4 plus 3 over 3 plus 1 over 3. My last step is to combine all of my whole numbers and then leave my fractions as my leftover. So I know 4 is already a whole number, and I know that if I have 3 over 3, this means that I can make 1 more whole. So I'm really adding 4 wholes plus the 1 whole I made out of 3 over 3. That gives me a total of 5. Now the last step is just to add in any leftovers. In this case, since I've already added these two numbers, my only leftover is 1/3. So my answer is 5 and 1/3. So that is my final answer for the addition of 3 and 2/3 plus 1 and 2/3. Hopefully we're feeling okay with our addition and subtraction of mixed numbers so far. Right now though, we're going to jump into the subtraction piece of that puzzle. So moving on to a new example, we are going to subtract 5 and 4/6 minus 3 and 5/6. But wait, the first thing I want to do when I'm subtracting these mixed numbers is look at the numerators. If I see a subtraction sign in my problem, that tells me the first thing I want to do, I'll say it again, is look at my numerators. So my numerators are 4 and 5. If I tried to subtract 4 minus 5, that's going to give me some pretty big headaches. So since I see that my first number is smaller than my second number, I am going to regroup in improper form before I subtract. So I'm going to turn 5 and 4/6 into an improper fraction. I'm also going to turn 3 and 3/5 into an improper fraction. Once I do that, then I can subtract easily. So I'm going to do my around the world, which we're rock stars at, to figure out those improper fractions. So 6 times 5 gives me 30, plus 4 gives me 34, and I keep my denominator of 6. And I'm subtracting from that 6 times 3, which is 18, plus 5, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And I keep my denominator. So now I'm subtracting 34 minus 23, which is much easier. So I'm going to do my math, and maybe it's not that easy for me to do it sideways like this. So if I need to, which I recommend, I'm going to do it vertically. So I'm going to do 34 minus 23, 4 minus 3 gives me 1. 3 minus 2 gives me 1. So I'm left with 11. So I'm going to take that 11 and make it part of my answer. So I know that 34 over 6 minus 23 over 6 equals 11 over 6. But do I want to leave my answer in an improper fraction? No. So I'm going to convert this back to a mixed number form like these to make sure that I get my answer correct when it's graded. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 6 go into 11? Or I'm going to decompose. I'm going to decompose for this one because it's a smaller numerator. So I'm going to start with my whole fraction, which since my denominator is 6, my whole fraction is 6 over 6. Then I'm going to figure out my difference between 11 and 6. 11 minus 6 gives me 5 over 6. So now that I've decomposed my improper fraction here, I can turn that into 6 over 6, which equals 1 whole, and 5 over 6, which is my leftovers. So my final mixed number is the 1 6 over 6 that I was able to pull out of 11 over 6 plus 5 over 6, leaving my final answer as 1 and 5/6. Hopefully this has cleared up any questions that you've had about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. My best advice to you is now to practice, practice, practice. So go back, look over the worksheets we've done this week, look over our study guide, and use those questions to practice all of these steps that we've done today. I promise you, if you take the time tonight to practice your examples and review your notes, you're going to do awesome on tomorrow's test. Have a great evening. I look forward to seeing you in the morning. Bye.